Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Back in Time. For a second to start off with, we are going to take a step out of this ongoing trial and talk about something that happened back in 2009. During this time, Amber Heard was actually arrested and charged with hitting her then partner Tazia Van Ree. In the end, the charges were dropped, but this isn't where the lie comes in. The pair tried to claim that the only reason Heard was arrested was because the arresting police officer had realized that they were partners, not friends, and that the arrest motive was homophobia and prejudice. It was later found out that the officer who had arrested Heard was in fact part of the LGBTQIA+ community herself, and was actually an advocate and person who fought for equal rights. The officer spoke out after this entire ordeal, saying that despite these claims against her, she arrested Amber because an assault occurred and that she was the one who witnessed it in the first place. In our number 9 spot today, we have The Bed. This is an incident that we had definitely heard stories of prior to this currently ongoing trial, but during the trial we heard it spoken about more in depth. Basically, Johnny and Amber had an argument, after which Depp had left to give some space. This is when it is said that Johnny's housekeeper sent him a photo of a less than pleasant surprise that she unfortunately was left to deal with. This horrible surprise turned out to be that someone had left fecal matter in the bed that the two had shared together. Depp told the courtroom in reference to the incident that, quote, "My initial response to that was, I laughed." He then went on to say, quote, "It was so outside, it was so bizarre and so grotesque that I could only laugh." He then goes on to explain that Amber had actually tried to lie about the incident, and in the 2020 trial, which we'll talk more about, she denied doing this. Amber is said to have tried to blame this mess on their dogs, but during this trial, Johnny has explained that the dogs they had were teacup Yorkies, about 4 pounds each. He certainly knows what their mess would look like, and according to Johnny, what was on the bed was not it. In our number 8 spot today, we have the makeup kit. During this currently ongoing trial, Amber Heard's lawyer showed the jury a makeup palette as part of their evidence. The makeup palette in question was Milani's all-in-one correcting kit, and the reason it was introduced into the trial is because it was stated that Amber used this specific product during her marriage in order to cover the bruises that she claims he gave her. Since this statement was made in court, Milani Cosmetics has actually come forward in the form of a TikTok to refute that evidence. The TikTok posted by the brand pointed out that this specified product was in fact not even released until 2017, which would contradict the evidence. This is because the alleged that this product was said to be covering up is said to have taken place between 2012 and 2016, which is obviously before the product was introduced to the market. It is possible that the lawyer may have just been pointing out this product as an example of the type of product she used, but it was definitely not this product as they seem to have claimed.
While being cross-examined about her $3.5 million ACLU pledge, Heard was finally forced to admit that she did not donate anywhere close to the amount that she pledged she was going to years ago, and now she could be in trouble for lying under oath. After the couple divorced in 2016, Heard said that she would split the $7 million divorce settlement between the Children's Hospital LA and the American Civil Liberties Union, or ACLU, which would be about $3.5 million to each. At the time, she said she didn't want the money, rather she just wanted justice for Johnny's horrible actions towards her. But now that she's admitted to lying, legal experts claim she is in trouble. During her testimony, she stated that she has not donated the money yet because, quote, "Johnny sued me for $50 million in March of 2019. However, Depp's lawyer Camille Vasquez argued that Heard had the money for months before the lawsuit, yet failed to donate the money as she promised. To make matters worse, during the UK libel trial, Amber Heard gave completely different testimony and did not admit to donating the money. Sean Caulfield, partner at law firm Hodge, Jones and Allen, told Mail Online today that Heard could face a perjury probe in the UK as misleading a court, quote, "cuts to the core of our justice system." He also added police could in fact investigate these claims, continuing, quote, "While it may not be a central issue to the case, the donations, perjury is the single biggest threat and cuts to the core of our justice system, so the police may be invited to investigate to show that any member of the public who lies to the court can be prosecuted for perjury." Clearly, in the grand scheme, this lie does little to answer the question of if Johnny Depp ever got physical with Amber, but it clearly helps Depp's side argue that she is a documented liar, and if she lied about the donations, she could lie about a lot more. Legal expert Mark Stevens also said police could blame the lie on not understanding the question asked rather than deliberately not telling the truth. saying, quote, "It's notoriously difficult to bring and prosecute a perjury case. You have to show that someone deliberately told an untruth as opposed to them being confused or misremembering. I think it would be a very difficult thing to do." The mention of donating her divorce settlement first came up when Heard appeared on Dutch talk show RTL Late Night in 2018, where she said, quote, "$7 million in total was donated. I split it between the ACLU and the Children's Hospital of LA. I wanted nothing." At the time, she made it clear that she had already donated this divorce money. However, ACLU Chief Operating Officer and General Counsel Terrence Dougherty testified earlier in the case that only $1.3 million has either been donated by Heard or on her behalf, with most of it coming from other sources like Elon Musk. Of that money, Heard contributed $350,000 directly in December of 2018, and she's not paid off any more since. A further $100,000 was paid by Depp, and another $350,000 came from a fund at Fidelity, an investment company assumed to be Elon Musk. Depp's team is stating that Heard is a blatant liar who used the claim of donation to gain sympathy from the public. However, Heard has fired back that she intends to donate the money once Johnny Depp stops suing her. Heard is also no stranger to perjuring herself. She was investigated back in 2015 by the FBI for lying about illegally bringing her dogs into Australia. Heard avoided charges after she publicly apologized and blamed a lack of sleep on why she did not fill the required paperwork. During the trial, Heard and Vasquez started talking about Heard and Depp's divorce. When asked about it, Heard said that she tried to keep the information on the divorce as private as possible, but she knew that when she filed the paperwork, media outlets would be able to see the public records. However, Depp's attorney had a different view and accused Amber of telling the paparazzi to be there when she filed for divorce, causing a massive news story for that day. The day that Amber did file for divorce, paparazzi were waiting outside the door to talk to her about what happened, almost as if they knew that she was there to file for divorce from Johnny. Vasquez also played a clip of Heard's previous deposition, where she essentially let it slip that she alerted TMZ. In the clip of the deposition, Heard was stating that she tried to warn Depp of the divorce before she filed so that he wouldn't be caught off guard. And she said, quote, "I didn't want him to find out online that I had or was about to file for divorce. I wanted him to know verbally, so I was trying to reach him through a third party to tell him." Continuing, quote, "I would like him to know that information so that he finds out about the divorce filing from some other source other than TMZ, which was alerted." And then in this deposition, Heard covered her own mouth because she realized she had just exposed herself. Vasquez then pressed her about exposing herself, but of course Heard denied telling TMZ about her divorce before she filed. Vasquez also pressed Heard about potentially giving other evidence to TMZ as well, like the video that leaked of Johnny banging up their kitchen. The kitchen video was leaked the day before Heard filed for divorce, and Vasquez asserts that TMZ now owns this clip because Amber sold it to them. Vasquez also questioned Amber Heard on how TMZ could have possibly gotten a hold of a video that was taken on Amber's cell phone, but Amber continued that she did not give the clip to the news outlet. Johnny Depp's psychiatrist has taken the stand during the trial between Depp and ex-wife Amber Heard, and he exposed that Depp did not want to get married to Heard, but she pushed him so hard for it, eventually he gave in to her demands. Let's get into all the details. Depp's psychiatrist, Dr. Alan Blaustein, took to the stand to speak about Depp's behavior and feelings during his relationship with Heard. While on the stand, Dr. Blaustein admitted that Johnny was not sure if he wanted to marry Amber or not. One of Depp's reservations was that he was 51 years old at the time and felt he was too old for the change. He also read a note where Depp described Heard as, quote, "being my mother and psychotic sister," sharing reservations he had with their relationship in general.
In our number 3 spot today, we have The Story. This entire list is full of really serious things and really serious accusations, and this one is certainly high up on the list of the most serious things we're talking about today. This is actually something that came out in court during the trial that took place in 2020. During this trial, Amber Heard's former assistant Kate James came forward to tell quite a terrible tale. James explained that years ago, when she was in her 20s, she experienced a horrible sexual assault that has haunted her ever since. It's already a terrible story, but was even furthered when Kate explained, quote, "To my utter shock and dismay, I discovered that Miss Heard had in fact stolen my sexual violence conversation with her and twisted it into her own story to benefit herself. This of course caused me extreme distress and outraged that she would dare to attempt to use the most harrowing experience of my life as her own narrative." It was during this trial that Kate explained that although she had been subpoenaed to give evidence, she was doing doing so because she is, quote, a sexual violence survivor, and it's very serious to take that stance if you are not one. This was the trial that Depp had brought forth against The Sun for publishing the op-ed written by Heard, and it was at that moment during the trial that the lawyer representing The Sun discontinued their cross-examination of Kate. In our number 2 spot today, we have the LAPD testimony. Just a few days in court, we saw Los Angeles police officer Melissa Sain's testimony. This officer had been one of those who responded on May 21st, 2016 to Amber's penthouse after there was a call regarding DV. The officer testified that when she arrived at the scene, she found Amber crying and that her face was flushed red with emotion, but she explained that she didn't necessarily see any injuries. During the video deposition, the officer explained that, quote, we met with the victim, we checked the location, the husband wasn't there, and that the victim advised us that she had just had an argument, and that she wasn't going to give us any further information. And because we didn't identify a crime, we issued her a business card, let her know that she could reach out to us later if she changed her mind and wanted to cooperate. It was just later that month, after this 2016 incident, that Heard filed a restraining order against Depp, accusing him of being violent towards her. In our number 1 spot today, we have the settlement. It is said that on multiple occasions, Amber claimed that the fund she received from her divorce settlements were funds that she would entirely be donating to charity. She is said to have claimed this on TV, in various newspaper articles, and even on court statements that were signed under oath. This was directly disproven, however, as that simply is just not true. Of course, being caught in this lie, especially one she spoke about while under oath, she was questioned about it. Amber claimed that she was unable to fulfill her pledge because of the fact that she had to defend herself in court in this defamation lawsuit, but again, this was able to be disproven. The money that was donated is said to have been done so in increments, with the last payment being in February of 2018. Johnny Depp did not sue Amber until 2019, marking the discontinuation of these payments at a time before she was being sued by Depp. At this point, it is unclear if she initially lied about her intentions and the amount she was going to donate, or if she was just lying about the reason why she stopped the payments. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Notting Hill. During Amber Heard's testimony, she spoke about her and Johnny's first time meeting and basically how they fell in love. So during this, she spoke about a time where Johnny was sober, he wasn't drinking alcohol, and instead he was drinking tea. Lots of tea. If you have been following the trial, her emphasis on how much tea he was drinking might have struck you as a little odd. I mean, I was watching it live and I was a little confused as to why she spoke about it so many times and seemed to care about it so much. Many people on the internet, however, are starting to believe that it may be a reference to Notting Hill. It's similar to a line that Julia Roberts is seen saying to Hugh Grant, and people out there think that the way Amber said it in her testimony was also a mimicked version of how Julia Roberts said it. It may seem like a small thing, but in the grand scheme of all of the quotes that we're going to talk about on this list today, it certainly becomes a little more interesting. In our number 9 spot today, we have Mildred Pierce. During Amber's testimony, she begins talking about what she claims is the first time Johnny hit her. While speaking about this, she claims that after this, Johnny said that he would, quote, rather cut off his hand, end quote, than lay another hand upon her. Many people believe that this is a line that was stolen right from the 1945 film Mildred Pierce. In this film, there's a scene where Mildred sort of suddenly lashes out and she ends up slapping Veda across the face. As Veda stands there looking surprised at what just happened, Mildred apologizes for her actions, saying, quote, I'm so sorry I did that, I've had rather cut off my hand. The lines definitely are similar, whether or not they were directly stolen from these pieces of work. Maybe they're stolen, maybe it's a coincidence, or maybe it just shows how rehearsed the testimony is. In our number 8 spot today, we have the talented Mr. Ripley. This quote is definitely one of the most popular ones floating around the internet today, and it is said to be in reference to Amber Heard's opening statements. People are claiming that Amber was directly quoting the talented Mr. Ripley, which featured a character who would shower people with gifts and then sort of disappear, sort of similar to what Amber testified about her relationship with Johnny. While it's floating around the internet that she directly quoted the movie word for word, I could not find a timestamp where she took the quote directly. Instead, however, I could find things that would sort of suggest a similar story to what was seen in the movie. The quote people are referencing says, quote, the thing with blank, Amber says Johnny, it's like the sun shines on you and it's glorious, and then he forgets you and it's very, very cold. When you have his attention, you feel like you're the only person in the world. That's why everybody loves him so much. Amber didn't say these words exactly as far as I could find, but she does say something similar. She talks about a sort of warm glow that was felt at the beginning of their relationship, and that he showered her with gifts and made her feel like the most beautiful woman in the world. world, and they would be in this bubble for 4 or 5 days at a time, but then he would suddenly just disappear. In our number 7 spot today we have Australia. So this is a claim that Amber made about a time that her and Johnny were in Australia together. Amber claimed that during this time she was held like a hostage for 3 days, and during these days she said she came to harm multiple times. Despite these very serious allegations, it later came to light that during this hostage situation she claims to have been in, she not only had her cell phone, but also there was security just outside of the door. She testified that she could have called anybody to come and get her at any point if she wanted to, despite previously saying those very serious things that she had mentioned prior. It is said that Amber claimed that on the second day of this 3-day hostage situation, which would have been March 7th, she endured a series of hours-long assaults. But despite these claims, on that day there were several people at the house speaking with both of them, including medical professionals who of course recorded no such findings. In our number 6 spot today we have the recording. During trial, Amber claimed that she only hit Johnny Depp once and that she did so in defense of her sister. It is said that this alleged incident occurred in March of 2015, which is after the Australia incident we just spoke about. So during trial there has been a series of audio recordings that have been submitted as evidence. Many of these recordings were taken by both parties consensually, and this is said to have been a regular occurrence in their relationship. On one of these recordings, which was taken in September of 2015, Amber clearly admits to hitting Johnny, which is of course contrary to her statement saying she only hit him once in defense of her sister. Of course, Amber's sister Whitney was asked about this event, and Whitney backed up the claims made by Amber. This was again refuted by a declaration made by Whitney's best friend and former employer Jennifer Howell, who claimed that at the time when this incident is said to have occurred, that Whitney had actually told her that Amber was abusing Johnny and that she feared Amber would kill him. Jennifer also stated that Whitney had actually moved in with her at one point because she was so afraid of her own sister. In our number 5 spot today we have the December 2015 claims. Back in December of 2015, Amber claimed that she suffered 2 black eyes, a broken nose, broken lip, bruised ribs, bruises on her forearms, bruises in her hairline, scalp and chin, missing hair, and wounds that had pus in them. These are obviously some serious injuries, and on the 17th, just days later, it is said that she saw 2 separate nurses who gave her physical examinations. During both of these exams, neither nurse found any bruise, either fresh or healing. One of the 2 found a bleeding lip, but the nurse's notes claimed that the skin was intact, it was a normal color, and there was no sort of concussion. These medical notes obviously paint quite a different picture from the extensive injuries she claims to have received. In our number 4 spot today we have the psychologist. Just a few days ago during the trial, we heard a forensic psychologist testify named Dr. Shannon Curry, who was hired by Depp's legal team. During this testimony, she claimed that Amber Heard suffers from borderline personality disorder as well as histrionic personality disorder. Dr. Curry is said to have reached this diagnosis after interviewing Heard for 12 hours as well as after reviewing her mental health records. Now, while there's certainly nothing wrong with this diagnosis, this is where Dr. Curry's testimony brings up something that is in contrast to what Heard had previously claimed. Amber is said to have claimed to suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, as a result of the things that she endured over the course of her relationship with Johnny Depp. Dr. Curry, however, directly contradicted this in her testimony, where she claimed that Heard in fact does not suffer from PTSD. It is thought that Depp's team hopes that this testimony may help their contention that Heard was the aggressor during the couple's relationship. In our number 3 spot today we have the article. This is something that wasn't stolen from a movie or a piece of literature, but it is something that people have been pointing out because it seems as though it is untruthful, or at the very least in direct contrast to something she had mentioned prior to their divorce. Amber claimed during her testimony that prior to her relationship with Johnny, she wasn't a fan of his. She said she wasn't a fan of his art, but when fans found an article from years ago, they began to question just how true that really was. In the article, it is said that Amber, as a teenager, had photos of Johnny all over her room. A friend of hers told the Inquirer that Johnny was basically Amber's first love, that when she was a teenager, she had already decided to become an actor, and that she had photos of him all over her room. They finished by saying, quote, "So it's no surprise they fell in love while working together. Amber can usually get whatever she sets her mind to." In our number 2 spot today we have Alpha Dog. This one is is more of a theory in relation to the trial rather than a direct ripoff, but it certainly is interesting. So we have all heard the story of the poo on the bed at this point. If you haven't, basically it's just a story that suggests that Amber had left feces in the bed that she and Depp had shared together after a night of arguing. It is said that she tried to blame the mess on the pair's dogs, but many people have suggested that this was just a lie to cover the bizarre action. This theory in question is that this entire move was one that was stolen from the movie Alpha Dog. In the movie, which she actually was in, although it was a short appearance, one of the characters who is under the influence of certain substances decides to defecate on his enemy's rug as revenge. It certainly is a cinematic move, that's for sure. Whether this is true or not has yet to be proven, but it certainly is a compelling theory. In our number 1 spot today we have Maid. People on Twitter pointed out a similarity in Amber's testimony to a Netflix series called Maid. People specifically pointed out the part where she was talking about how Johnny allegedly threw a glass in her direction, then punched a wall, then punched the wall right next to her. According to people who have seen the Netflix show, which is about a woman who is fleeing a very harmful relationship in order to provide a better life for her children, it is said that this scene is actually in the show. It is entirely possible that real life just happened to align with the show, but with everything else on this list, people certainly are more suspicious than they normally would be. Many people said that even during her explanation of this story, they vividly thought of this Netflix show.
Number 10, Hilaria Baldwin. The podcaster and former yoga instructor is best known as the glamorous, mysterious woman whom Alec Baldwin is married to. In a recent scandal, Hilaria Baldwin found herself caught in a massive lie. It all started when comedian Amy Schumer made a joke on Instagram, posting a postpartum photo of Hilaria holding her 3-month-old baby while wearing lingerie. She was making light of the fact that she looks like a Sports Illustrated model just months after giving birth to her 5th child. Then Hilaria got upset and went on Instagram Live in response, calling for body inclusivity, and said that the movement also needed to include women who look like her. But in the heat of the moment during the 4-minute video, Hilaria forgot to speak in the Spanish accent that she's been putting on for close to a decade. This resulted in a massive internet investigation, where people found out that she is really in fact not from Spain, as she claimed multiple times in the past, but she was born in Boston, USA. Oh, and her name isn't Hilaria, it's Hillary. Fans also dug up a shocking clip of her on the Today Show, pretending not to know the English word for cucumber. Eventually, she started backpedaling like crazy and claimed that she first visited Spain when she was a baby, and her family returned at least once every year. But she declines to specify how much time she spent there altogether. So why would you claim to be Spanish if you only vacationed there a couple of times? Number 9, Milli Vanilli. Perhaps one of the most infamous scandals in music history came when the duo was caught in one of the biggest lies ever. Fans had long speculated that Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan, two guys with thick European accents and limited command of the English language, couldn't possibly have created hits like Girl You Know It's True and Blame It on the Rain. And yet the news of their deception still came as a shock to many. As they enjoyed the trappings of their monumental success, Rob and Fab struggled to live with their secret. On July 21st in 1989, the group's backing tape malfunctioned during a live performance at a club in Bristol, Connecticut. And as the words "Girl You Know It's" repeated over and over, Rob panicked and ran off stage. The incident had no immediate effect on their career, but he would later call the incident the beginning of the end. Figuring their time was running out, the two turned against their producer Frank Farian, who of course was in on it the whole time, and they demanded to sing on their next album. As the battle intensified, Farian had no choice but to call a press conference and spill the beans. He was unapologetic about the scam, and in 1991 he released a new studio album credited to the real singers. But for Milli Vanilli, the consequences of being found out were catastrophic. They were stripped of the Grammys they had won for Best New Artist, and duped fans filed a class action lawsuit against them. The scandal ended up following them both forever. Number 8, Brian Williams. Once an extremely trusted news reporter, Williams's career was put in jeopardy when he was caught in a lie of his own making. Over the years, he told a shifty story about the day that he flew aboard a US Army helicopter during the 2003 invasion of Iraq. In later versions of the story, he said that his helicopter was hit and forced down by enemy fire. He was caught in a big lie though, as yes, that did happen, but he wasn't even on the helicopter. He embellished the story to make it seem like he was right in the middle of the action, when in reality, he was more of a witness. He said, "The story actually started with a terrible moment a dozen years back during the invasion of Iraq, when the helicopter we were traveling in was forced down after being hit by an RPG. Our traveling NBC News team was rescued, surrounded, and kept alive by an armor mechanized platoon from the US Army 3rd Infantry. Except that never happened. It wasn't long before the other soldiers who were actually on that helicopter that was hit and had to perform an emergency landing posted on Facebook that they didn't recall Williams or his crew being on board. They said that he arrived approximately an hour after the formation had already landed. Called out for his fabrication, Williams came clean and called the recollections a mistake, saying that he conflated one aircraft with another.
In our number 7 spot today, we have I Am a Killer. During Amber's testimony, she spoke about a time when she and Johnny were around another woman and they were all under the influence of different substances at the time. Amber claimed that at one point this other woman leaned her head on Amber's shoulder, and she claims that this set Johnny off. She went on to allege that Johnny then at some point grabbed this woman's wrist and twisted it and pulled it towards him. It is then that Amber claims he said, quote, "Do you know how many pounds of pressure it takes to break a human wrist?" She went on to say, quote, "He held her and she looked frozen. She's crying." Many people online have pointed out that this line, which she claimed he said, is actually something that was said by someone who appeared in the Netflix show I Am a Killer. In the Netflix show, the woman was serving a life sentence for taking the life of her former partner who had broken her hands in this exact same way. The episode in question was called In Her Hands. In our number 6 spot today, we have Shrek 2. Okay, this one is certainly probably the silliest on this list and definitely a little on the satire side, but the internet will always be undefeated in seeing something and running with it. This is a moment in the trial that someone on TikTok was quick to point out was kind of similar to a moment in Shrek 2 of all of the movies that exist. In the Shrek clip, Prince Charming is looking around going, "Whoa, what happened here?" In this TikTok clip, it quickly cuts to Amber, who says the exact same thing almost in the exact same way. I would definitely like to assume that she did not steal a line from Shrek 2 for her testimony, but at this point, really, anything is possible. In our number 5 spot today, we have White Chicks. During Amber Heard's first day of testimony, she told quite a frightening story that she alleges is a real and true thing that Johnny did. She explained that there was a point where she had called Depp's sister, who is said to have showed up later to help remove Depp from the home, but as they were driving in the car, she told a terrible tale of what she says happens. She said, quote, "He has the window down. At some point he starts howling out the window and he grabbed Boo, his dog, a slightly chunkier teacup Yorkie. He grabs Boo and holds Boo out the window of the moving car. He's howling like an animal while holding the dog out of the window." She does go on to explain how everyone reacted in this situation, but people on the internet were quick to point out a hypocritical moment. Not only did people think that this story was taken straight out of the movie White Chicks, in which there is quite a similar scene as to what she just described, but there is also an Instagram photo that has since been circulating the internet of a similar scenario that Amber described, but in this scenario, it is very clearly Amber who is holding the dog out of the car window. This has all made people skeptical of this story she told and unsure of the truth behind it. In our number 4 spot today, we have True Detective. This is a moment that is similar to the I Am a Killer one we already talked about, and it's in reference to the part of Amber's testimony where she was speaking to an aggressive moment that happened on a flight between Amber, Johnny, and the flight attendant who was on the same flight at the time. Amber claimed that Johnny grabbed this flight attendant's wrist, slammed it down, and said something similar to how a few pounds of pressure could break it. One Twitter user was quick to point out the similarities between this testimony and a scene from True Detective Season 1. People seem to believe that this was taken from the show, considering the similarity of this story to the other one we already talked about, as well as the similarity to the show. It is compelling that people are pointing out that perhaps either of these women might have spoken out or testified if these stories were true, but of course that doesn't mean the story isn't true, it's just an interesting question we have to ask.
Number 3, Suki Waterhouse. The British model and singer told a fairly innocuous lie when she claimed to use Coca-Cola to wash her hair. Speaking to Us Weekly in 2015, Suki said, "I rinse my hair with Coca-Cola sometimes. I don't like my hair when it's washed, it's fine and limp, but Coca-Cola makes it tousled, like I've gone through the Amazon or something." So apparently because the popular drink makes her strands appear more textured, she uses Coca-Cola. Fast forward to 7 years later and she admitted on Twitter that she lied about the whole thing. When a fan asked her if she still rinses her hair with a soda, she confessed, "Okay, I have to be honest, I got bored doing hair interviews and said this. I have never done this." She then retweeted an article written by someone who had tried her beauty method and said, "I did Jessica dirty." In case you're wondering, there is a reason why some people have said the Coca-Cola method might actually work. Apparently it contains something called phosphoric acid, a very very low pH. So when you apply it to your hair, the cuticle tightens, which makes your strands look smoother and your curls look more defined. Others say the sugar adds build up to your hair, making it look fuller and giving it more shine. But unfortunately though, it's not going to cleanse your hair. Instead, it'll leave in dirt particles, and long-term use will be very unpleasant for the scalp and hair from a conditioning point of view. Number 2, Britney Spears. The pop star was dating Justin Timberlake in 1999, and they were considered the it couple as soon as they first got together. Britney was just 19 years old and under immense pressure to maintain a public image that was both sexy and innocent. This was difficult when every TV and radio interview ever was asking her if she and Justin Timberlake were sexually active. At one point, she addressed the speculation and said, "The virginity issue. It's a personal decision and it reflects how I feel right now about myself. There are so many emotions involved that I would like to be able to wait until I know I'm with the right person and I'm married." But for his part, Justin obviously didn't feel like he had as much at stake, and he revealed that yes, they had in fact been intimate. During a conversation with Hot 97, Justin was asked if they'd ever done the deed, to which he said, "I did it. I'm dirty. I'm in so much damn trouble, man. I'm going to get calls from my mother." Britney addressed his confession years later, saying, "It was 2 years into my relationship with Justin, and I thought he was the one, but I was wrong. I didn't think he was gonna go on Barbara Walters and sell me out." Years later, the documentary Framing Britney was released, and it revealed how Justin used the breakup to boost his career. As a result, he immediately found himself at the receiving end of a ton of backlash over his past treatment of Britney. And coming in at number 1, Taylor Swift. The singer was called out big time in 2016 when Kanye West released a song called Famous, which was met with extreme backlash. In the song, he name drops Taylor and says, "I made that be famous." In response, the singer clapped back at the 2016 Grammys, saying, "There are going to be people along the way who are going to try and undercut your success or take credit for your accomplishments or your fame." Then Kim Kardashian came to Kanye's defense and leaked a recording of Taylor agreeing to the lyrics over the phone when Kanye called her from the studio. This caused a massive scandal to erupt, and fans quickly called Taylor a snake for seemingly lying that she had never consented to him using those lyrics. The whole world thought that she was well aware of the song and not fazed by it, but it wasn't until 4 years later that the phone call made the rounds on social media and exonerated Taylor of any wrongdoing. During the call, you can hear Kanye reassure her that the lyrics won't be mean, and he conveniently leaves out the fact that he's going to call her the B word in the song. So that's why there are still debates going on to this day over whether or not Taylor did anything wrong. Number 10, fake footage. One of the key subjects in their new documentary is undoubtedly the intrusion of the media. It's the way that Harry and Meghan have tried to frame their situation. Harry and Meghan have tried to frame their situation as exactly what the late Princess Diana went through. In a clip showing various images of his mother being hounded by paparazzi, Harry says, "The pain and suffering of women marrying into this institution, this feeding frenzy, I was terrified. I didn't want history to repeat itself." But even this clip in the 1-minute trailer has already been criticized for using footage that is completely unrelated to the couple, all to try and paint a very specific picture of them trying to escape media attention. They also added in footage of Katie Price during her court appearance, a Harry Potter film premiere, and even a clip of Donald Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, being chased by photographers. But that's left a lot of people wondering, why don't they just use their own footage if the same thing has been happening to them? Critics have also pointed out that the images of a photographer on a balcony taking a picture of the couple while they're holding Archie is completely staged. It turns out that it was actually from a photo shoot with an accredited photographer during Harry and Meghan's visit to Cape Town. But the documentary tried to make out that this was a super intrusive moment of them being captured on camera. So obviously they've chosen to stick with the story that they just want to live a reclusive life away from it all, but they cannot help being dragged into the spotlight. Number 9, Meghan wanted to be single. Another idea that the documentary pushes is that the Duchess desperately wanted to remain single before she met Harry, and that she had a fantastic life without him before it was all ruined by the press. Meghan, who had already been married once before, said that she was intent on being single, and a friend is quoted as saying that she was set on having a single girl summer, and then came H. She said that their first private date was at the Soho House venue on Dean Street in London, which is a private members club for creatives. Harry turned up late, and Meghan said she wondered if it was a demonstration of male ego, but he was apparently sweaty with nerves and immediately dispelled her fears on that front. Their first date lasted an hour, and she said she thought Harry was great fun. She then asked him to dinner again, back at the club, which he told her was so American and forward. The camera then cuts to Meghan's friend and Suits co-star Abigail Spencer, who says she had a whole life before she met H. Another one of her friends says she had a core group of friends. Meg was very outgoing, super social, living in Toronto. She was very open-hearted. Meghan then says, I lived in a great little residential community. I had my 2 dogs. It was great and low-key. Go for hikes and walks, go to set. I loved my job. So all in all, she wanted to reiterate that she really loved her life before she met Harry. Number 8, they both made sacrifices. During the first hour-long episode, which includes a sit-down interview with the couple, as well as clips from a video diary, Harry can be heard saying, "This is about duty and service. And I feel as though being a part of this family, it is my duty to uncover this exploitation and bribery that happens within our media. My job is to keep my family safe, but the nature of being born into this position and the level of hate that is being stirred up in the last 3 years, especially against my wife and my son, I'm generally concerned for the safety of my family." Harry describes his and Meghan's relationship as a great love story, saying that she sacrificed everything she ever knew, the freedom that she had, to join him in his world. And then pretty soon after that, he ended up sacrificing everything that he knew to join her in her world. So basically, Harry made it seem like they both gave up certain things to be with each other. Meghan gave up freedom and the ability to live her life how she wanted. And then obviously Harry ended up giving up his royal duties and separated from his family to be with her. Later on, he also brought up the situation with her father Thomas and said, "Of course, it's incredibly sad what happened. She had a father before this, and now she doesn't have a father. And I shouldered that, because if Meg wasn't with me, then her dad would still be her dad." Number 7, the renovation controversy. Meghan and Harry joked that their first royal home was too small and not what anyone would expect from a property in palace grounds. Before they got married, the couple arrived in Nottingham Cottage, which is a grace and favour home in the grounds of Kensington Palace. Then they later moved to Frogmore Cottage in Home Park, Windsor. But Meghan and Harry lament the reality of living at the cottage, which they says sounds like a palace, but it really wasn't. Harry said, "As far as people were concerned, we were living in a palace, and we were in a cottage on the palace grounds." Meghan said, "Kensington Palace sounds very regal, of course it does. It says palace in the name, but Nottingham Cottage was so small." Complained about how it had very low ceilings, and insisted that Harry would often bump his head because of them. This was one of the worst parts of the docuseries, as they tried their best to make the property seem undesirable. Of course, they did not address the renovation controversy at all. In fact, they subtly justified it. If you didn't know, they were accused of using exorbitant amounts of taxpayer funds to renovate the home, which was a little over $3 million. They eventually repaid it all, but only after being criticized in the name of public interest. Number 6, claims of jealousy. Amidst the list of bombshell accusations in the second installment of the series, viewers could not help questioning something that Harry said about his wife. He truly believed that there was some kind of jealousy from other royals towards Meghan, given the amount of media attention that she was receiving. He said the issue is when someone who's marrying in, who should be a supporting act, is then stealing the limelight or doing the job better than the person who was born to do this, that upsets people. It upsets the balance. Because you've been led to believe that the only way your charities can succeed and your mission can grow is if you are on the front pages of those newspapers. Harry then gave an example, saying that the first time the penny dropped was when he and Meghan were at Buckingham Palace after a joint event with every senior member of the royal family. That morning, every paper had Meghan front and center, with Kate Middleton on the side. According to the couple, it was at this point that they started being targeted by the monarchy that wanted them to fail because they stole the limelight. But this is represented with no evidence. In fact, the idea is mostly proposed by friends or contributors that were interviewed, which is a device that somehow leaves you feeling that the couple weren't quite prepared to say certain things themselves, but were quite happy for others to do so. Number 5, excluded from the family. The couple spoke about the moment they saw the rest of the family at Westminster Abbey for the Commonwealth service. This was apparently the first time they saw each other in person since announcing their decision to step back from their duties. And Harry said the meeting both looked and felt cold. He said, "I felt really distant from the rest of my family," which is interesting because so much of how they operate is what it looks like, not what it feels like. But it looked cold and it also felt cold. After discussing the death of his grandfather, Prince Philip, Harry brought up the time that he flew back to the UK to attend his funeral and admitted that it was hard going back for the first time since he and Meghan had left the family. It was difficult talking to his father and brother because they very much focus on the same misinterpretation of the whole situation. He said, "None of us wanted to talk about it at my grandfather's funeral, but we did. I've had to make peace with the fact that we're probably never going to get a genuine apology or a genuine accountability. My wife and I, we're moving on, we're focused on what's coming next." So Harry believes that when he returned to the UK, his family were already giving him the cold shoulder. And it was at this moment that he realized they would never apologize for what they've apparently done. Number 3, meeting the royals. The couple got candid about the reception that Meghan received from the royals when she met them for the first time. Reflecting on the time that Will and Kate came over for dinner, Meghan recalled looking a little too casual, walking around barefoot in ripped jeans. She said, "I was a hugger. I've always been a hugger. I didn't realize that is really jarring for a lot of Brits. I guess I'd start to understand very quickly that the formality on the outside carried through on the inside. There is a forward-facing way of being, and you close the door and go, we can relax now, but that formality carries over on both sides, and that was what was surprising to me." Meghan also spoke about meeting Harry's late grandmother, Queen Elizabeth. She said she didn't know she was going to meet her until moments before, and she remembers thinking Harry was joking when he asked her if she knew how to curtsy, to which she said it was so intense. In a more serious moment, Harry said that his family members were incredibly impressed by Meghan, although some had some obvious misgivings. Quote, "Some of them didn't quite know what to do with themselves. They were surprised. The fact I was dating an American actress was probably what clouded their judgment more than anything else at the beginning, thinking this won't last." Meghan agreed and said that she felt the UK had a particular view of what being an actress meant, and that it was easy to typecast. Number 2, racism in the family. Harry revealed that certain members of the royal family questioned why Meghan should be protected from negative press coverage, reflecting on one headline declaring that his new girlfriend was almost straight out of Compton, which was a reference to her upbringing in Los Angeles. Harry says that the palace's direction to the couple was, "Don't say anything." He said, "But what people need to understand is, as far as a lot of the family were concerned, everything that she was being put through, they had been put through as well. So it was almost like a rite of passage. And some of the members of the family were like, my wife had to go through that, so why should your girlfriend be treated any differently? Why should you get special treatment? Why should she be protected?" And I said, "The difference here is the race element." He went on to say that there is a huge level of unconscious bias in the royal family, and that it's actually no one's fault. But once it has been pointed out or identified within yourself, you need to make it right. Meghan's mother, Doria Ragland, also spoke about some of the news coverage, claiming that the press would take pictures of different parts of Skid Row, which is an impoverished area in LA, and say that was where she lived and that was where Meghan was from. Doria also said that she initially warned her daughter that race was playing a significant role in how the tabloid media was responding to her relationship. And number 1, the royal engagement interview. In episode 3 of the new docuseries, Meghan scoffed at the memory of her and Harry's 2017 royal engagement interview. The episode begins with a flashback to the couple's memorable first TV appearance, which Meghan called an orchestrated reality show, revealing that from their adorable photo shoot to the sit-down chat, everything about that announcement was rehearsed. Meghan said from the get-go they weren't allowed to tell their true story when they were faced with questions about their relationship and her family. A flashback of the BBC interview then sees the Duchess looking extremely uncomfortable when she's asked whether or not Harry had met her father, Thomas Markle, who did not attend her 2018 wedding. So according to the new documentary, that interview was essentially fake and they weren't able to fully express themselves. It turns out there were plenty of details about their engagement that they had to keep to themselves. Harry confirmed that the proposal actually took place at home as Meghan was roasting a chicken, and says that he inadvertently inadvertently tipped her off to something special when he brought home champagne. To set the scene, he set up electric candles in the courtyard of their Kensington Palace cottage, and of course, he got down on one knee. Number 10, the Queen was influenced. Palace courtiers have dismissed suggestions made by Harry that the Queen was influenced by her aides when she decided that he was out as a working royal. In the second half of his Netflix series, Harry claimed that his grandmother was swayed by the opinions of others, especially during the Sandringham Summit in January of 2020, which was made to determine the future of Harry and Meghan as royals. He said, "You have to understand that from a family's perspective, especially from hers, there are ways of doing things, and her ultimate mission, goal/responsibility is the institution. People around her are telling her that proposal or these two are doing X, Y, and Z is going to be seen as an attack on the institution. Then she's going to go on the advice that she's been given." But courtiers within the palace have cast doubt on his version of events, with those close to the situation claiming that at the time the Queen was strong and sharp enough to make the decision herself. One inside source told The Times, "It's outrageous. Harry never wanted to admit to himself that it was the Queen who said, 'No, you're out.' He couldn't fathom that he wasn't the cheeky chappy who was going to sweet talk grandma into getting what he wanted." Another source said that he had deliberately shifted the narrative about his grandmother. When he wasn't getting the support from her that he wanted, he represented her as passive, someone who only sat in the corner and listened. Number 9, the truth about Meghan's niece. Meghan claimed her half-sister was suddenly everywhere when her relationship with Harry went public. She said that she was shocked by her comments in the press and said, "I don't know your middle name. I don't know your birthday. You're telling these people you raised me and calling me Princess Pushy." Samantha has since appeared on Sunrise this morning, and she certainly did not hold back her opinions about her sister. She said, "First of all, I will not call it a documentary. When I was trying to appropriately name it, it was a floppymentary. It is so much rhetoric at this point, and so many lies have been thrown out there, debunked, and yet there is still repeated need to push this narrative. It is ridiculous. It borders on comedy. It's that bad." The Sunrise host then asked her how she felt about the comments made about her specifically in the third episode of the series by both Meghan and her biological daughter Ashley Hale. In response, Samantha said that Meghan lied about the entire situation and that Ashley not getting invited to the wedding was not the royal family's decision, it was Meghan's. She said, "No, I knew she was not at the wedding and it kind of saddened me, but it is surprising to hear that there was a narrative spun that made Ashley feel like she was not invited because of something having to do with me." So basically, she didn't feel that the royal family had instructed Meghan not to invite her niece, a claim that has now been debunked by multiple sources. Number 8, stories planted against them. One of the biggest accusations leveled against Prince William was that he and his office had been planting negative stories about the Sussexes. Harry spoke of the dirty game that was played by the royal communications teams and the media, where they would trade damaging stories about one family member in exchange for a negative story about another one being dropped. He said, "There's leaking, but there's also planting of stories. So if the comms team want to be able to remove a negative story about their principal, they will trade and give you something about someone else's principal." He went on to say, "To see my brother's office copy the very thing that we promised the two of us would never do, that was heartbreaking. I would far rather get destroyed in the press than play along with this game or this business of trading." Harry's claim that stories were leaked and planted by royal comms teams to remove a negative story about their principal really comes and goes without much context. In fact, a lot of the things that Harry has been saying on this point seems to be referring to what he witnessed as a child with his father's office. But then he says that he saw William's office do the very same thing without explaining why he thinks this or what stories he believes were planted or traded. Number 7, dealing with paparazzi. Meghan opened up about the fact that she essentially had no training for her new role as a member of the royal family. She had recounted the blunt warning that she got over the phone from Harry shortly after news broke of their relationship in 2016. She said that while she was living in Toronto and filming Suits, she encountered a pack of 9 or 10 paparazzi as she was leaving a florist. She said, "They were all sort of blocking the cars going, 'Hey, how you doing, Meghan?' And I said, 'Oh, thanks. Stay warm, guys.'" Then she said, "I remember Harry saying the next day, 'You can't talk to them.' And I was like, 'I'm just trying to be pleasant. I don't know what to do. I've never dealt with this before.' And he said, yes, but the UK media is saying you love it. You're smiling. You love it. The screen then cuts to images of tabloids that came out about Meghan, implying that she liked the attention from paparazzi. Essentially, the Duchess believes that the press took advantage of her naivete in order to generate negative headlines. Although at one point she also says, "It's so funny if I look back at it now, because now I know so much and I'm glad I didn't then, because I could just authentically be myself without so much preparation." Number 5, Meghan's family. The Duchess said that she believed the British press were hell-bent on trying to make her mother fodder for the tabloids. She said, "You just have my mom, who's classy and quiet, and then you have the other side of my family that is just acting differently." Meghan went on to discuss her half-sister Samantha Markle, who she said was suddenly everywhere when her relationship with Harry went public. Meghan was bewildered by her comments in the press and said, "I don't know your middle name, I don't know your birthday. You're telling these people you raised me and calling me Princess Pushy." She also addressed the incredibly sad series of events that led to the falling out with her father, Thomas Markle. Meghan claimed that she was unaware that her father was working with the media. She said she didn't know that he was selling staged pictures of himself to tabloids until a week out from the wedding. Some of these set-up pictures included him working out to get into shape and sitting in a cafe reading a book about the UK. It got to a certain point where her communications officer encouraged her to call her father to find out if it's true or not because it could really be damaging. She ended up calling him and said, "Look, they're saying you're taking money from the tabloids for staged photos. Is it true?" Thomas denied the allegations, but Meghan said that she still didn't believe him. Number 4, questioning her relationship. As the paparazzi presence escalated in Meghan's life, the documentary reveals that at a certain point, her friends tried to make her second-guess her relationship with Harry. Meghan said, "When all of that started happening, my friends and the people in my life who love me and care about me are like, is he worth this? Like, we know that you're happy and we know that you love him, but is he worth this? Look at what's happening to your life." The camera then cuts to an interview with her former personal assistant Chantel Humphrey, who says, "Meg would go to the grocery store and get recognized, and people would say, 'Aren't you that girl from Suits?' Other than that, she had so much freedom. She had such a beautiful life before everything exploded." At one point, Meghan says that she went to the police to flag that she was being stalked by photographers, but she was told, "There's really nothing we can do because of who you're dating." But this changed when she received her first death threat, as she was given security detail to escort her to and from the Suits set. At this point, she says her inner circle began asking her a tough question of whether or not she should be continuing her relationship with Harry. For his part, Harry said, "Dating became a combination of car chases, anti-surveillance driving, and disguises, which isn't a particularly healthy way to start a relationship." Number 4, the Sandringham Summit. In the 5th episode of the series, Harry talks about a meeting that took place within the family to discuss the couple's decision to break away. He claimed that the reason that Meghan wasn't there was because there were arrangements made to ensure that she was not in the room at the time. Harry said, "It was terrifying to have my brothers scream and shout at me, and my father say things that simply weren't true, and my grandmother sit quietly in the corner and sort of take it all in." He described that meeting as hard and said it ended without a solid plan of action. He said, "The saddest part of it was the wedge created between myself and my brother, so that now he's on the institution side." The claim that Prince William screamed and shouted at Harry during the so-called Sandringham Summit, discussing their future, was an uncomfortable one, but it does actually make sense given the heated feelings on all sides at the time. But his suggestion that his father said things that were not true in that same meeting is largely meaningless, because he provides no context or further explanation as to what he could have been lying about. It seems as though the docuseries is deliberately filled with lots of ambiguity, as Harry and Meghan make a lot of assertions but offer very little facts to back them up. Number 3, Meghan praised by a crew member. Something that didn't sit right with a lot of viewers was a clip about the Freedom Flight, when Meghan was leaving the UK for good after her final royal appearance, which was attending the Commonwealth Day service at Westminster Abbey. Apparently, one of the crew members on the flight came up to her and thanked her for her royal service, which made her very emotional. She recalled the moment saying, "I get on the plane and not the pilot but whoever was overseeing the crew, he came and he knelt next to my seat and took his hat off. I just remember looking at him and he goes, "We appreciate everything you did for our country." Megan explained that it was the first time someone had recognized the sacrifice that she made. She said, "Not for my own country, for this country. It's not mine." And that's the piece that's so triggering, because you go and it still wasn't good enough and you still don't fit in. According to Megan, once she landed in Canada, she collapsed in the arms of one of the security guards and started crying, saying, "I tried so hard," which the security guard apparently says, "I know you did, ma'am." The added drama might have been necessary for something on Netflix, but a lot of this seems more like the plot of one of their TV shows rather than a legitimate fact-based documentary. Number 2, attacked by the media. The documentary was loaded with negative headlines about Megan, insinuating that this is what pushed them to the breaking point. Harry said the toll was visible, the emotional toll that it was having on both of us, but especially my wife. "We're going to have to change this for our own sake." He claimed that after their 2018 wedding, that was when the press really started to turn on them. Over 6-hour-long episodes, Harry and Meghan made it clear that they were crushed by the notoriously toxic tabloids, who were so egregiously racist and sexist in covering her. But it was the palace's lack of support that really broke them. The firm was unwilling to bend on their advantageous agreement with the royal press. In fact, since the docuseries aired, more and more people have been calling out the media for attacking Meghan. Top Gear's Jeremy Clarkson wrote a column in The Sun, which has provoked a mass outcry online, with social media users labeling it vile and horrific. In an article for the paper, Clarkson wrote that he loathed Meghan on a cellular level, and described a detailed depiction of her getting publicly shamed. As a result, his comments have drawn widespread condemnation. Number 7, Hillary Clinton. During her speech at George Washington University in 2008, Hillary had been regaling supporters on the campaign trail with exciting tales of a trip that she made to Bosnia in March of 1996. In her retelling of the story, she made herself out to be a brave action hero, as she claimed that she was sent to places that her husband, Bill Clinton, could not go because they were too dangerous. She said, "I remember landing under sniper fire. There was supposed to be some kind of a greeting ceremony at the airport, but instead we just ran with our heads down to get into the vehicles to get to our base. That's not what happened." In fact, there was even a CBS News video released that shows Hillary arriving on the tarmac under no visible duress and greeting a child who offers her a copy of a poem. Immediately after the speech that day, a reporter asked her about the other people that were on the trip who had come out challenging her story. In response, Hillary doubled down and said there was no greeting ceremony and we basically were told to run to our cars. Now that is what happened. But she retracted the remarks only a week later and said that she had misspoke and that she had been told there was a threat of sniper fire in the area. But obviously she just wanted to up the ante and add a little bit of drama where there was none before. Number 6, Ed Sheeran. The singer cut his face quite noticeably back in 2017, and soon reports emerged that during a heavy night of drinking, Princess Beatrice had sliced his face open with a sword while she was trying to knight his friend at a party. The story goes that when she went to lift the sword, she accidentally slashed his cheek. Ed went with that story for quite some time until it was revealed that he had caught himself in a lie. But it was none other than James Blunt who set the record straight, because he was there at the time. He exposed his friend and claimed that the whole Princess Beatrice fiasco was just completely made up. Instead, he said, "Ed was drunk, messing around, and he cut himself. We made a fancy story up, people fell for it. It was very embarrassing." But interestingly enough, Ed has since gone on the Graham Norton show and refused to admit that it was made up, saying, "I can't talk about it. I don't know what will happen if I do." Then his manager Stuart Camp addressed the incident on a podcast and called Princess Beatrice an effing idiot. Quote, "Certain people said, oh, you should lie and say it wasn't her, and say it was someone else. I said, well, we're not telling anyone anything. I'm not lying. Just because someone's an effing idiot and they've been waving a sword around when you're all drunk, it's not safe." So what really happened? Who was lying? Maybe we don't know the truth after all. Number 4, Lance Armstrong. Some people have called this the biggest sports scandal in history. Lance was the best pro cyclist at one point in time. The American won the sport's most prestigious event, the Tour de France, 7 consecutive times from 1999 to 2005. But he was holding in an explosive secret that would tarnish his reputation forever. In 2012, Armstrong denied that he ever relied on performance-enhancing substances, calling the allegations against him outlandish and heinous. But when the US anti-doping agency released compelling evidence, his web of lies crumbled. He eventually admitted to Oprah Winfrey in 2013 2013 that yes, he did in fact cheat and stated that his mythic perfect story was one big lie. Calling himself deeply flawed, he said, "This is too late. It's too late for probably most people, and that's my fault. This was one big lie that I repeated a lot of times." He also admitted that he was a bully in the sense that he tried to control the narrative, sometimes by spewing venom at ex-teammates he thought were disloyal, as well as suing people and publications that accused him of cheating. What's more, Armstrong insisted that he never felt bad or felt that it was wrong when he used the performance-enhancing substances. The whole thing remains one of the most dramatic sports interviews ever. He was subsequently stripped of his 7 Tour de France titles and bronze Olympic medal, and he was forced to step down as chairman of Livestrong, and all of his achievements were gone in an instant.
The psychiatrist claimed that Depp was paranoid during this time and had many issues that were caused by his chaotic relationship. After the shocking testimony, tweets went viral sharing the news. One tweet wrote, quote, "Per his psychiatrist notes, Johnny Depp did not want to get married to Amber Heard. We have seen from other witnesses that the wedding had been rushed and pushed for by Amber with no prenup." Another tweet read, quote, "Johnny Depp's psychiatrist. He suffered with anxiety and depression. He compared Amber to his abusive mother. He had substances to numb his pain. He tried to leave Amber. Great witness for Amber." During his testimony, Dr. Blaustein shared Depp's issues with substances along with common feelings of rage and jealousy. He stated, quote, "It was a very chaotic relationship and a lot of fluctuations, up and downs, lots of difficulties, emotional expressions, lots of anger in both places and high intensity, a lot of love, a lot of disappointment, a lot of fears." The doctor added, quote, "Part of his goal of therapy was to work through the anger that he and his fiancée had towards each other." The doctor met with Depp 18 times between October of 2014 and January of 2015, and he testified that the Pirates actor, quote, "expressed having anger towards Amber and feelings of jealousy." The doctor even shared that Depp had similar feelings of rage and chaos in previous relationships, including with the mother of his children, Vanessa Paradis. Specifically, the former couple had many arguments about child care. The psychiatrist also testified that he and Depp spoke about his abuse as a child and how that affected his adult relationships. During the sessions, Depp did not speak of any physical violence with Heard, but claimed she was, quote, "such a pain in the ass," and his relationship with Amber reminded him of his relationship with his psychotic sister and his mom.
Ironically, she has a little difficulty crying, acting-wise, so...
Amber Heard's acting coach just exposed her for fake crying during the trial, and this could be the final nail in the coffin to anyone supporting her. Let's get into the details. In pre-recorded testimony, acting coach Christina Sexton said Heard had, quote, "difficulty crying acting-wise." Sexton worked with Heard from 2011 to 2017 and said she could tell when Amber Heard was genuinely crying because Amber struggled to produce real tears while acting. In the December 2019 deposition, the acting coach says she saw Amber cry multiple times during their sessions about her volatile relationship with ex Johnny Depp. Apparently, as the couple's relationship progressed and the fighting got heavier, quote, "I would have to build in time because she'd be sobbing at the beginning of sessions and we couldn't work until we got her together." Sexton further described their relationship to the court. Apparently, they had more than a professional relationship and became friends over the years. Apparently, Heard even invited her acting coach on birthday trips and vacations. She testified that at the start of Heard and Depp's relationship, she witnessed the couple being, quote, "incredibly lovey-dovey and passionate and always together in a positive way." But as time went on, that changed, and she saw Depp and Heard together less, along with hearing them get into arguments while Sexton was there for at-home acting lessons. Sexton added, quote, "It went from being like a normal couple to very tension-filled, especially those last few months when they were together." Before her relationship with Depp, Heard was never late for their sessions. However, as time passed and things got worse in their relationship, Sexton claimed she needed to add in cushion time to their sessions because Amber would arrive frazzled or in tears and needed to be calmed down before they could do their acting work. Adding, quote, "I would say that last year they were together, probably 80 to 90% of our sessions began with her crying." In her deposition, Sexton said she could tell when Heard's tears were genuine because, quote, "ironically, she has a little difficulty crying acting-wise." During Amber Heard's testimony, she cried on multiple occasions, or should I say attempted to cry, because most of the time it looked like she made the facial expressions of crying, but the tears did not come out. So many are thinking this testimony from the acting coach proves that Amber has been faking in court, and her strange behavior with crying is due to the fact that Amber is not very good at fake crying. Things are about to get a lot worse for Amber Heard, as an insider just claimed that Warner Bros. Held an emergency meeting to talk about the fate of Amber Heard in Aquaman 2, and spoiler alert, they want her completely gone. Let's get into the details. We already know that all anyone can talk about these days is Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, and the internet has placed their support firmly behind Johnny, with the vast majority of people believing Amber Heard is a manipulative liar. This is not the response that DC was looking for, as the company took a huge gamble including Amber Heard in the sequel for Aquaman, even with petitions at the time online calling for her to be removed. As of now, a petition to have her cut from Aquaman 2 has reached a whopping 4 million signatures, and it's clearly making Warner Brothers executives very concerned. An insider just reported that with all the negative media attention surrounding the trial, Warner Brothers decided to hold an emergency meeting to discuss what to do about the Amber Heard problem. It's already been stated in court that Amber Heard's role in the film has been cut down dramatically, with her only appearing in roughly 10 minutes of the movie. President of DC Films Walter Hamada took the stand for 3 hours during Heard's trial, where he confirmed that her role in the movie was seriously diminished in the wake of the hatred against her. Heard agreed, saying in court, quote, "It was a very pared down version of the part that she was meant to play," claiming that Warner Brothers didn't want to put her in the movie at all. In court, Heard continued, quote, "I fought really hard to stay in the movie, they didn't want to include me in the film." During the deposition, the lawyer asked, quote, "Were you ultimately able to film in Aquaman 2? Heard replied, "A very pared down version of that role, yes." Then the lawyer responded, "What if anything changed in the script?" Heard continued, quote, "I was given a script, then given new versions of the script that had taken away scenes that had action in it, that depicted my character and another character without giving any spoilers away, 2 characters fighting with one another. They basically took a bunch out of my role. They just removed a bunch." As of now, we don't know if the claims made by this insider are true, but I think it's safe to say that DC is definitely having conversations about how they might move forward if Heard is found guilty of lying. And this is not the only problem facing Warner Brothers at this time. Most notably, the franchise is facing immense trouble with the Flash star, Ezra Miller, who seems to be getting arrested in Hawaii like once a month at this point.